Welcome to Mostly Star Wars, kind of a podcast uh, with your trio of hosts. We have Josiah,
Hello there.
we have Quinton,
Hello.
and myself, Tyler. Today we're going to be discussing Obi-Wan Part 5. We are doing a recording as opposed to doing a live just because of scheduling issues that have come up. So, uh, yeah, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know everyone was excited about this episode. It has lots of fun things to talk about. You want to get us started there, Josiah?
Yeah, so I think the coolest thing about this episode is we've all been super excited to see some flashback action, and we get it immediately. We jump right into some flashback, and we could talk about how that looked in a little bit here, but just taking a moment and being a Star Wars fan and seeing these flashbacks between Obi-Wan and Anakin fighting, it was so amazing to see. I loved, the kind of back and forth. I love the fact that even through their faces, you can kind of see, who they were and who they're going to become. Like we always talk about that foreshadowing. They did it excellent on this, and like not only through what they're saying to each other, but also the way that they're fighting. I love that intro. That was amazing.
Yeah, we finally get to see them dueling. It was pretty sweet, and I like how it's mixed throughout the show
Mm-hmm.
because you kind of can take the lessons, and it's kind of interesting how both are taking lessons from the same fight, basically throughout this episode in this flashback.
Mm-hmm.
And I like one thing that the show starts. It has an overview of them, and it shows the floor of the Jedi Council, and it's got these light and dark rings, and at the center there's one dark circle, and I kind of wonder if that's supposed to symbolize, the darkness in Anakin and the choice he'll have to make, and then that's why in the center it's dark, that he'll be going towards the dark side there. That was a fun one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then,
Yeah.
go
Oh
ahead.
yeah. I was gonna say yeah. Another thought. Just kind of while they were fighting, it was interesting to kind of see, you know, obviously Anakin's powerful, and even in that moment, he kind of outpowered Obi-Wan, right? He was kind of like power wise outpowering him, but I think that the lesson that he's going to end up getting, about being too hasty, and that it's not necessarily all about power. I love how that's going to tie in later. uh, it's going to tie in later in the episode. So, yeah, we'll definitely talk a little bit more on how the ending of that duel in the flashbacks ties in. But yeah, I love that point too. That it's not necessarily all about power, because if it was, Anakin probably would have won.
I thought was really interesting about that part was just how well Hayden played that role. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
he's 20. He's 20 years older than he was when he was playing pre Attack of the Clones Anakin, and yet he was able to just like as soon as he started talking, it just felt like it was perfect for that time period they were playing, and the way his attitude was and the way he acted was just fantastic.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad you touched on that too, because I think that the flashback specifically with him, once again, there's already, there's backlash about it, and there's been a lot of chatter on social media about the fact that they should have deep faked him, or they
De-aged
should
him.
have made, yeah, de-aged him to some extent with the technology that they have. And like the more I thought about it, I kept going back and forth, because I was like, obviously, yeah, that would have been good or cool, but at the same time, I kind of loved what you just said. Like, Hayden Christensen now did an amazing job. It wasn't like that was his face, that was his, gestures and mannerisms and all that type of stuff. Like, him as an actor did an awesome job playing that character from 20 years ago. And I think that was more powerful to me than doing a deep fake where it's not necessarily him even.
Mhm.
I like that it sounded like him, and it definitely I almost kind of wondered if they had done something to his voice to make him sound like he did when he was that age,
Mm.
because when I first heard it, I saw it, I'm like, okay, yeah, he looks a little over, so what? But when I heard it, I'm like, okay, well, that just sounds like him from Attack of the Clones. So, and that sold me. I'm like, okay, I just buy into that. That's him, and it was great to see. And you know what? This is what happens if you want to use actors to play their younger selves, basically. And
Yeah.
I was perfectly fine with it. It worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So then we get at the beginning of the episode there, Riva's made the Grand Inquisitor.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, so sorry we haven't mentioned this before, but obviously this is a podcast about Part 4 overview, so spoilers.
Yeah, a little late.
So yeah, it's a little late. That's all right. They say better late than never.
True.
So, yeah, Riva's made the Grand Inquisitor, which I thought was pretty interesting because she's getting what she wants. But I do like that we get a lot more of her story in this episode. We really start to see what her real motivations are and what she's after.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, her story isn't a whole lot different than Anakin's, which is kind of sad. If you really think about it, she doesn't even realize that she's doing the whole Anakin line of "you became the very thing you sought to destroy."
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of interesting. You guys want to comment any more on that part before we start moving on? Because I feel like I feel like we'll comment more on her story as we get further into the episode.
Yeah, no, yeah, I totally agree. I would just say one thing at that opening cadence. And once again, for all of our listeners, this one's also going to be kind of short, so we're going to be kind of rushing through it a little bit faster than normal. But yeah, another point that I really liked is when Riva walked in, she was walking in like you would imagine somebody walking in front of Palpatine. She was nervous, and then she was like, "Oh, it's such a great honor to be on your ship." Like, I just thought that was like an important piece to put into the puzzle, that just being in the presence of Vader, like, is a privilege. And then I'm sure she was also getting flashbacks of the last time she was in Vader's presence and he was about to kill her. So, I think she was definitely treading lightly this time.
Yeah, for sure. So then we get we show them coming back, and they say we got the girl, and we see Haja, and I was like, "Oh yes, he's still there." He's great, and I loved
his old tricks.
I loved his line though. He's like, "Oh, now I know what it's like to be a real Jedi. It's exhausting."
Yeah.
And then what does he say? There's a lot of profit to be made here, or something along those
lines. He has to run from the same people, but this is a good business opportunity for him, is what he says.
I feel like he's a live action, a little bit better of person maybe than like a Hondo character.
Exactly. That is exactly what I was gonna say. He's like a Hondo, 100%.
Yeah, and so it was fun to see him. And then when Obi-Wan tells him to watch over Leia, he's like, "I'm not a babysitter."
But then he does it anyway.
Yeah. He's the guy that always complains and is always looking out for profit and stuff, but then he still always does the good thing.
Right. Yeah.
He's complaining that he's doing it, but he still does it.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Mm.
and I liked the little scene where there Obi-Wan starts to see, you see the little child, and it says the path. The older lady says the path will protect us,
Yeah.
and that was real interesting to me, and to see that uh, they're relying on the Jedi, and there's still more to that we haven't seen yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And then
And
so
then, yeah.
okay, go ahead.
No, yeah, I was gonna say, I think another thing, and this might be jumping a little bit, but the conversation that he ends up having with Tala, I thought that was really good too, because we needed to hear that. Everybody wanted to know what kind of like flipped that switch for her. We knew that there was some sort of event that happened, but we just didn't know exactly what it was. And so I love that we got to hear that story, that it was from her. And I thought that was a really cool moment between the both of them. And then when she pulls out her blaster and shows that she's keeping track of all the ones that she's been able to help.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a really cool moment. And once again, she was able to give like another lesson to Obi-Wan, proving that maybe you can't save everyone. Or the line, and I may be butchering this a little bit, but where she basically says, you might not be able to forget, but like you can make it better. So like I thought that was a really cool lesson too. Like, a lot of bad things happened, and it's not just going to go away, but you can, from this moment on, do the right thing and make a real difference.
I liked, because normally when you see someone, a character like that, keep track of something, it's usually like, how many people in the Empire have you killed?
Mm-hmm.
Or, and she's showing what's important. It's not how many stormtroopers has she shot, but how many lives have she saved from this uh, tyrannical government.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was a good one. And so yeah, jumping ahead a little bit, then you get. I think it was even might have been a little bit before that part, but Obi-Wan sees the writing on the wall, and
Yeah.
what did that? I have it written down here. Um. Oh yeah, he says that the light will fade, but is never forgotten.
Yeah. I love that.
And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that one was like, ooh, and it's just uh, you can feel how this is trying to touch at Obi-Wan's soul, where he's figuring out that maybe he needs to do more, or at the very least he's been doing his mission on Tatooine, but because he hasn't been busy in the Force and doing other things, he's kind of, I think, let his connection to the Force diminish, and maybe his faith a
Mm-hmm.
little bit
Yeah.
in the same. And so this is kind of, you can see it building back up, like, I am part of the light and I need to be one of the ones that isn't forgotten.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's connections to, throughout the Star Wars movies, talking about like the spark of the rebellion. That was kind of like the first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
Is, like all it needs is just a little spark, to get going. And I think if you watch like these last few episodes for sure, where we had already talked about like they called him General, there's plenty of people now, especially on Jabim, that knows exactly who he is, what he's capable of, what he used to stand for. And so I think now more than ever, it was important for him to take the lead. And a little bit later when he does, we can talk about that. But I love the fact that like he just totally takes charge, and he's like, how long is it
Mm-hmm.
going to take to get this done? 4 hours. You got one, and
Yeah.
block all the exits. Like I just love that, because you could just see, he there's a switch that turns in his head, and he's like, all right, everybody's depending on me or whatever, and he takes charge just like as he did, back in the Clone Wars.
Yeah, he steps up and talks and says, if we fight them, we won't survive, but we can hold them off until we can escape.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just like Leia or Haja asks Roken if you've gone into the vent, and he's like, "Do I look like I could fit in the vent?" And he's like, "Yeah, I relate to that." and then Leia goes in. She says, "Get me a ladder. This is no time to play, princess." Obi-Wan chastises him. No, do what she says.
Yeah,
I trust her. Let's go. And that was a fun one. And
I keep on mixing up too when it was, but had he already came across the box of lightsabers in
that was
Jedi
right
Robe?
after the moment that we just talked about, where where the light will fade.
Yeah, and I hadn't looked anything into that. I don't know if you guys had, but I was like, I have a feeling there's definitely Easter eggs in there. Like, those aren't random lightsabers. I feel like if, somebody's researched it and been like, that's so-and-so's lightsaber
There's only
or whatever.
I saw someone mention that there was only one that looked like maybe it could be someone's that they recognize, and the one person that it maybe could be was Barris Offee.
Oh, okay.
And that was the only one that looked like it was a recognizable one, at least in the little bit that I had done. There could be more that we just haven't realized yet, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
I almost feel like Grievous is ready to come back for that collection.
That is a really nice collection.
That is funny.
Yeah, I keep thinking too, like anytime we see stuff like this, like when we were seeing like in the Inquisitor's conference room, all the lightsabers, and then when we see this, or when we saw the people that were in the amber, I think it really casts a light on how many Jedi there really were, like in the galaxy, because I think a lot of times when you watch the movies, especially like if you're talking about the original trilogy, right? There was like none until Luke. So yeah, I think like even in the prequels, I don't think people really understood the amount of Jedis that there were at that time even. So I think hitting these different moments is really important to kind of show you, this wasn't just the ones you saw in the movie. There wasn't like 15, 20. There was like hundreds.
There was about, I think they say Attack of the Clones about 10,000 in that time, which in the galaxy is not very many if you think about it. 10,000 people over thousands of systems. And that's why the Jedi in themselves, that's why they could be so easily forgotten, because people almost never saw them anyway.
Yeah.
And only if you had contact with them, and they were all spread out. Their home base was Coruscant, but they were all out all over the galaxy doing peacekeeping missions and stuff. So
yeah, because I think the other thing is like on the Battle of Geonosis, if I remember right, and you guys probably know this better and you could correct me, but I want to say why Yoda was saying when they're like, oh, like it was a success, it was a victory, and he's like, no, it wasn't. I want to say that I read somewhere they said that 100 Jedi died. Is that right?
I don't know an actual number on that, but
I felt like
right.
I felt like I heard that somewhere. I read somewhere that 100 Jedi died in the Battle of Geonosis.
Oh, I'm sure. So that's close. That seems about right. I mean, there's a good number that are just there in the stadium scene.
Mm-hmm.
There's a good 20 or so almost that are dead in that scene.
Mm-hmm. So I think, Order 66, like you were saying, like obviously there's tons of Jedi that were out doing other things. Not every single Jedi was, directly involved, in, specific like war missions or anything like that. During the Clone Wars, they were still doing all their other things as well. So I think this kind of is really, proving the point and showing that there really are or were a lot of Jedi that were just, out there in the
Mm-hmm.
wings when all this went down. And so then, they're randomly still out there in the galaxy, either hiding or,
And
trying to do their small part.
that's why Sidious and Vader came up with the Inquisitors to hunt the rest of them down.
Mm-hmm.
So then Bail sends that message,
Yeah.
and am I the only one that thought, like, are you gonna be that plain in a message,
Yeah.
Bail?
Like, yeah, not even like, obviously is, maybe the message itself was like, somehow like locked or something like that for the average person, maybe was encoded to some extent.
Or be a little bit
And
more cryptic.
but yeah, like himself and what he was speaking, even if it was, like, supposed to, there was no way for someone to be able to hack it or something, even if you still should think to some extent, like if somebody does get their hands on this thing, yeah, I mean, even when it was like garbled at the end, like that was still enough to tell a lot. So that says how much he said.
Exactly. And yeah, because he just flat out says it. Oh, if he's found out about the children, Owen will need help with the boy.
Yeah.
I'll go to Tatooine.
Yeah, and even says Tatooine, yeah. Oh, man.
And it's like, obviously, Reva knows because, well, she literally almost killed Owen just a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And well, yeah, it's hard to say if there'd ever be like interaction again. But what I was gonna say is, yeah, I don't think she even probably remembers his name because she did ask his name, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
Yeah,
she
yeah,
does technically,
she spoke his name, I'm pretty sure.
yeah. So she did technically hear his name, but out of all the people and everything
And
going
knows he
on,
has a
I don't
family.
know. Yeah, I don't know if necessarily she's like, oh yeah, I remember that that guy I was about to kill on Tatooine or not. But either way, she would be able to piece it together, if she
Mm-hmm.
went for sure.
So, and this is, so we get the assault. They start the battering ram,
Mm-hmm.
and that part was just sweet. And then, so Obi-Wan's like, I'll go talk to them. She started this when she took Leia. I'll go talk to her. And then you see the stormtrooper, or is it one of the purge troopers from Fallen Order?
Yeah.
And he says he wants to negotiate. Did anyone else, in my mind, when I heard that, I was like, I heard the negotiator. It's like, yes, General Kenobi.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fun moment.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
but then now we can get into Reva's story there, where he starts, where, I mean, it's not even her. She doesn't even really say much at the start. Obi-Wan just pieces it together. He said, "There's no way you could have known that he was Vader. He would have kept that secret." And so he pieces it together, like, unless you were there.
Mm-hmm.
And that part was just chilling, because then you can start, and you see it from her side, where she's saying enough, and you're getting the mini flashbacks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
for sure.
yeah, that was where he's assaulting her, and it's kind of chilling, because here is the hero of the Jedi, the best warrior, the poster boy for the war, everything, and she's saying, we thought he was there to save us, because they, in their mind, especially younglings, when they see all this stuff that's going on, and they see Anakin, yeah, that's you assume that he's there. That will make everything better. He's the warrior of the Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
just to see him, and then more cutting down younglings. It's almost more chilling. Like we make that meme that's been there from Revenge of the Sith for 15 plus years now, and
Mm-hmm.
but it's almost more chilling to the fact now that you're kind of actually seeing some of it, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, Anakin, no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I thought that was it was definitely interesting, and I've seen different people's take on finally her story being a little bit revealed. But for me, I feel like it totally made sense to me. There wasn't the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. I think the only thing that still kind of surprises me is the fact that even if she was there, she saw Anakin doing that. The fact that she knows that he's now Darth Vader, because that was a pretty private, thing that happened with Palpatine finding him on Mustafar and then taking him and creating the suit and all the enhancements or whatever to keep him alive. So like I thought that was interesting that like Darth Vader isn't telling people that for sure, like we had talked about before. The Thrawn books, he's ready to kill someone if they say the name Anakin. So I was
I
like,
think
who's the one saying, "Hey, this is the Jedi Anakin"?
I think it's in a book or something, but the official record of Anakin Skywalker shows that he died at the temple when Order 66 happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of interesting to like, even though yeah, technically she was there, and obviously she was up close and personal with Anakin, putting a lightsaber through her abdomen. But I still like that's still like a little bit blurry, like how she knew that Anakin obviously turned bad, but how that is after Vader in his suit, how that's specifically him. That's a little interesting. But yeah, as far as her story, I actually really love that because you did comparisons to Anakin, because so basically she put her feelings of like you know that she had for her other classmates, the other younglings in her class, above the Jedi Order. And she
Uh
allowed
huh.
her feelings of
Her
revenge,
revenge. Yep.
yeah, to well up inside of her to the point where, once again, like you said, now she is the person she was, sworn against to fight against, this dark side. Now she is the dark side, but in kind of like a, you know, in a Anakin sand, people type of revenge. Like
Mm-hmm.
there was something evil, that happened to her, and to her friends, obviously.
So
And so it came from an understandable place, I guess you could say.
so out to your point about how she put two and two Anakin and Vader together. There is, I think I've even mentioned it previously when we're talking about the show. There is that scene where in Revenge of the Sith, where Obi-Wan goes into the security recordings, and it's Anakin kneeling before Palpatine, and he calls him, "You've done well, Lord Vader." So if she was sitting
Mm-hmm.
there and seeing that, she could have seen Palpatine call him Vader, call Anakin Vader at that moment before he becomes more machine than man.
Or
So
it's
she,
Yeah.
possible that she could have even overheard the clones calling him Vader.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, I can see where people can complain about that, but also it's like you can just kind of fix that with a tiny bit of headcanon, really. It's
Yeah.
not, it's It's not a very big stretch there, I don't think.
Yeah, for sure.
So, one thing, yeah, like we kind of talked about, she kind of does the whole Darth Maul thing, and her rage and revenge spools her into surviving.
Mm-hmm.
And Obi-Wan, I feel like he tries to convince her that they're on the same side, but she really only sees one side, and that's revenge. And so, we're kind of jumping a little bit ahead yet, but I'll jump back. But when after the initial breach of the compound, and he
Mm-hmm.
surrenders himself without his lightsaber and everything,
Yeah.
he talks to her one more time,
Mm-hmm.
and I think during this conversation, he's basically trying to convince her that maybe they can take him together.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that Obi-Wan was actually meant that, and
Mm-hmm.
that, but because she was so apprehensive to it and didn't really want to listen, where he decided to take off. He's like, I'm not going to
Yeah.
stick around and for this fight if she's not going to try to do it the right way. If she's not going to listen to reason, then I'm not going to stick around, and I'm just going to use her to bring Vader and use her as a distraction to get away.
Mm-hmm.
Because it almost is like a sincerity in his voice where he's trying to plead with her, hey, we're on the same side here. We want, but that goes back to the earlier conversation they were having, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the very last things she says, and it's like it just hits you in the soul because he says we're on the same side, and she says, "Oh, really? Do you really want Anakin dead?"
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And there's just a pause, and the music, and you kind of have to like dwell on it. And you're like, "Yeah, true."
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
And because, yeah, we already seen the fact that no, he doesn't.
mhm,
And he couldn't finish it when he had the opportunity to, and maybe it was too late at the moment that Obi-Wan did finally confront him. But the other thing in that conversation is that also kind of hits you hard is she finally was showing like her full emotions, and it wasn't just rage, but she was showing her emotions when she said, like, when she was blaming Obi-Wan for what happened. She was basically saying, like, where were you? Where were you? You were the one that was training
this is
him.
your Padawan.
Yeah. And like he basically, you know, went in there and massacred, everyone in the temple, including younglings or whatever, when Obi-Wan is the master.
I
Obi-Wan
think
could have been there to fight him to possibly save the children.
I think that's kind of why she's she doesn't listen to him, because she can't get over that rage and anger and revenge that she's looking for, and see that Obi-Wan is on the same side, because she
Mm-hmm.
blames him as much for Anakin as Anakin's actions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that's why she doesn't want to team up with him, because I think frankly she wants Obi-Wan dead as much as she wants Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
And it so when that moment though, when you think, do you really want Anakin dead? I just made me think of their fight in A New Hope.
Mm-hmm.
Is he convinced at the time that maybe there is something there, especially with him knowing Luke and seeing what he's doing, that
Mm-hmm.
that's why he surrenders himself? Obviously, I know he surrenders himself for Luke, but mostly for Luke. It was
Yes.
the sacrifice for Luke to understand what a Jedi does, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
all Star Wars trilogies have. They have the mentor that dies in the first episode, to help the new generation grow and understand the decisions you might have to make.
Yeah. And now after going through this series, maybe it even meant more to Leia than we ever understood in the past. That same moment when he looked over. And I love the fact that in that, and obviously, we're now talking about another movie, but if you look at his face, like, he's such an amazing actor, but when you look at his face, it's like 100% calmness, 100% peace. And I feel like almost in a way it was one final lesson to Vader slash Anakin, you know, and, he's seeing firsthand, what someone that's truly and purely good, like, what they will sacrifice up to their own life, for the good. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's kind of another point in his whole story arc that we kind of see where he can't kill Anakin. It's like, even like in his last moments, yes, they had a mini duel, and some could say, well, he couldn't beat him even if he wanted to, right? But at the same time, I don't feel like he was still in defense mode during that duel.
Are you
He
talking
wasn't.
about the duel in episode 3? And I mean,
Yes.
part
Yeah.
part three of Obi-Wan.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, like, like, I still kind of feel like, throughout
I think
all
he
of
was
their
just trying to
fights.
survive, honestly.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
he wasn't
definitely
even.
he was.
I
But
don't
I
think he
mean,
was defending
wasn't-
anyone else, really. I mean,
Yeah.
he was distracting Vader, but other than that, he was just trying to survive.
Yeah. 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 So yeah, I think in all the fight scenes that we've seen in the show, and then in the movies as well, I still feel like, doing that fatal last kill, and why I think also in the recap that we saw at the beginning of the show, they made it a point to show Padme say that they're still good in him. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that also plays a factor, like you were mentioning, even all the way up until the end. I do feel like Obi-Wan does, believe truly deep down that there is good in Anakin. And I think that Reva asking him that, I think really did hit him deep as well. Like, yeah, I don't want him dead because I want him to have a redemption.
Mm-hmm. I kind of want to. I kind of want to keep talking about this a little bit more, but I also want to move on to we can do some little R.I.P. Tala,
Yes.
and this one was really good. I thought, because we had talked about last week how no one cared about Wade,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, when she died, I'm like, no, she's a
Mm-hmm.
good one,
Yeah.
and the way I thought it was incredibly. This was almost because she's been Obi-Wan's mentor over these 3 episodes, kind of, in a way, and so, and this was her sacrificing moment to restart him on where he needs to be. And I just love that the droid, well, one, where he gut punched that stormtrooper through the roof. That was pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
But then the droid, the way he shuts down and is destroyed, he makes sure that he's in a position that completely covers Tala so she won't get shot, but
Yeah.
doesn't fall on to her when he shuts
Mm-hmm.
down.
Yeah.
And so Ned B sacrifices himself, and then she does the whole Star Wars thing, shoots the door closed,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
then uses the thermal detonator,
Yeah.
and it's just that was a tragic scene, and kind of to the point we were talking about last week with Wade dying too early and no one caring. Well, this one I definitely cared. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't want her
Yeah.
to survive.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
I think, all Star Wars fans, love droids too.
Mm-hmm.
The droids like our pets, like, you fall in love with them, they become part of your family, your Star Wars family, right? And I love watching these shows. I usually watch it by myself, or I'll watch it with my wife, and then I'll watch it with my kids. And I love kind of seeing Star Wars through their eyes, because You know, they like Star Wars in different ways than I do. And so in moments like these, you know, my wife's definitely like super emotional during movies. She's a crier, you know. And so I loved this, and it really proves the point. Like, she legitimately said, like, who was Wade again? Like, she couldn't remember who he even was. And so that kind of proves our point. But then on this one, like when Ned B dies, like she was like tearing up. The droid was dying.
The
And
droid that
like
never
that just
spoke a line.
he never even spoke a line. But just because of the way that they filmed it, what he did, you know, what he stood for in the show, it was so much more epic, you know. And then obviously Tala, you know, finally got her. Finally got her. But yeah, I think that they played that excellent, and I think that was an awesome, you know, last episode for her, because she got to say all the things that Obi-Wan needed to hear from her, you know, before she sacrificed herself.
And that moment just goes off to what we just talked about of the character sacrificing the mentor, really. And Obi-Wan doesn't necessarily need a mentor, but at this time he kind of does. Necessarily not a mentor, but more like a colleague, just trying to push him back to where he is, just like a friend. If you get down and stuff, and a friend tries to help you and pick you up, I mean, that's really what she was. She was just trying to pick him up and help him to regain the hope that he used to have.
Yeah. And I think before we get into like the finale here, and the finale of our episode, I did want to briefly mention too, we are like super excited, and like we audibly celebrated when all Leia had to do is take the tracker off, and we got good Leia back, or Lola back.
Lola, yeah.
Yes.
Lola. I was like, you know, at first I was like, man, like
The
I was like,
restraining bolt.
yeah, because when the eyes or the lights turned red, right? The like red LEDs, I was like, did they fully reprogram her? But I love that she was just like, hey, what's this? And just like takes it off, and then
Oh,
it's
that's
back
better.
to regular Lola. Like, oh man, I love that part. And I was like, yay, she's good again.
Yeah, she's like, oh, that's better.
I like how Leia didn't like, you know, go, oh no, you're bad, and just discard her, but she took the time to figure out what was wrong with her and fix her.
I also love the part where Haja keeps, Leia, what's going on? Are you better yet? She's like, quit talking.
Yeah, I love that point too. Like that's what I was gonna mention earlier. Is it was kind of funny because they would tell him to check on her, right? And then it just reminded me of like, you know, when your mom says, "Hey, go tell your brother it's dinner time," and you're like, "It's dinner time." You know, it's like obviously they mean to go there and personally, you know, tell them,
climb the ladder and see.
Yeah, and he doesn't move. He just like yells, and they could have done the same thing.
Yeah, I like that. That was a good point. And so, yeah, we want to get into the finale here.
Quinton, you need to start this. You tell your thoughts as like Vader walks in.
Oh man, that was incredible. Holding the ship back was awesome. Just the pure power that he has, and then when he just opens it like a tin can. Oh man, that was.
I thought that was more impressive.
Terrifying.
I thought tearing the ship apart was more powerful than holding it from flying away.
He dragged it back to the ground and then just tore it apart. Just just peeled it like an orange, basically. Like not even a tin can, like an orange. Just like it was nothing to him. It was so incredible.
The one thing I was thinking though, the second time I watched it, especially, I'm like, is someone on that ship to pilot it, or is there a droid sacrificing themselves
probably another droid
to fly it away, or at least look like it's flying away?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, hopefully it was on autopilot and there wasn't a sacrifice involved. But yeah, I had the same way. I was super hype during that moment, and it was giving me flashbacks to like the OG Clone Wars when Mace takes that ship down. You know, like, and I love that because I was like, this is what I want like Jedi to do, like crazy stuff like this, you know. And then since we did get Rey stopping like that little shuttle, you know, in her movie, I love this because, you know, like I was like, yes, you know, like,
I
you
think
know,
it's
this is like
Uh,
obviously way more impressive because not only does he stop it, it's way bigger, you know, which size doesn't necessarily matter. You know, Yoda has taught us that. But
Yeah.
you know, it's so much more epic. And then he doesn't even just like hold it in place or stop it. He takes it to the ground. And then, like you
Yep.
said, he was like literally force taking chunks out of this thing. They weren't clean, they weren't like pieces. He was taking literal chunks. If people were in
Mhm.
there, oh man, you know, he
Yeah.
could care less about that. You know what I mean? Like he didn't know
Mhm.
there wasn't people in there. He would have been taking chunks out of people.
Josiah, did you ever play the Force Unleashed games?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In the first one, where you literally pull a Star Destroyer out of the sky,
Yes.
that was
Yeah.
kind of what I was feeling there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that was such an awesome moment to see. And once again, it's just putting Vader, you know, and we talked about this before the show. This is what we wanted to see. We wanted to see full Vader on like his
Mhm.
power in full display. And this is what it is. They totally served us fans up on a platter.
Mhm.
This is what Vader is. This is what he can
Yeah.
do. You know. So
Well, in
Yeah.
episode 3, of the or part 3 of the Kenobi show, we saw the darkness in him, and in
mhm.
this episode, we could see the full. I mean, I'm sure it's not the full extent of his power. I'm sure he's even more powerful than that, but he just made
Yeah.
it look so easy.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, maybe that's how we can jump into his do we want to say duel with Riva or
Right?
his embarrassing of her? Like, oh
Yeah, he
man.
totally like that part was so amazing because I was like, one, I liked that he was up until now, Obi-Wan and their duel, their flashbacks are going back. Up until this part, Obi-Wan's been right every time.
Mm-hmm.
But the final lesson is your need for victory blinds you.
Mm-hmm.
And he at the end here you should see that Vader was not blinded by his mission to see the betrayal coming.
Yep. I love that.
And then yeah, when she tries to attack him and he just holds her with the force and then
Just
he
embarrasses
doesn't
her.
even he doesn't even pull out his own lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
No.
He never pulls out his own lightsaber.
Yeah. And I think that goes to your point because so he was because in the another lesson from Obi-Wan is, you know, you don't know you need like a weapon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like he also plays on that. Yeah, at the very beginning, he doesn't even use a weapon, you know, and,
And then-
she's going
used the force to
hardcore,
stop her.
you know, and like I love it. Like some of the moments he was like using like fingers, you know, like to stop her, you know, like it wasn't even like full arm movements.
So I was watching,
Mhm.
I think it was Star Wars Explained, and he was talking about
Mhm.
when he stops and slows down her blade because the Inquisitors have the spinning blade,
Oh,
which
right.
was more of a weapon because frankly the Inquisitors aren't actually very powerful. They're
Mhm.
most of them are cast off Jedi that barely were Jedi,
Yeah.
and that just were able to be turned to the dark side, and so
Mhm.
they have that kind of lightsaber just to try to amplify their power a little bit.
Mhm.
Well, he one uses the force to just stop it from spinning, and then he does the same thing he's learning from the Obi-Wan from the training with Obi-Wan in the flashback. He just force pushes it or force pulls it right out of her hand, like
Mhm.
and
When he
and
had it, he had both of them in his hand. I was just expecting a full Count Dooku.
Yes, exactly.
That's what I thought was gonna
100%. That's
happen.
what I thought was going to happen too. I was waiting for that moment. But then once again, it kind of, uh, to like Tyler's point, once again, he was also like learning another lesson from Obi-Wan, you know, because he could have just killed her, but he didn't. He, you know, threw one to her, like, okay, do you want, you know, you want to have a little spar with the saber? And it also reminded me of like the like Dooku and Yoda too, right? It's like it kind
Mhm.
of had glimpses of that. Like basically Vader's like, okay, I can clearly beat you with the Force, Like
Mhm.
that's obvious here. So how
Yeah.
about let's try dueling with a lightsaber.
He's like, did you really not see me just rip that ship apart? How do you think that hole got there? Like, what do you think you're gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And I liked that because it kind of, we had talked about this. Reva's weak. She's not even where close to on par with Vader.
Mm-hmm.
And so then after he toys with her for a little bit, he stabs her in the stomach, and then da da
Flashbacks.
da,
Yeah.
Grand Inquisitor comes back.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I love once again, had already mentioned it, but once again, he learned his lesson before. And so he saw it coming. And then, and I love that he even said it like at the very beginning when she first walks in and
Did you
attempts
not
to
think I'd
to
see it?
strike him. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I love that, once again it shows, like he's not like in a mindless rage like he was like even at the end of, episode 3, of the
And
prequels.
yeah, and one thing, did you think I really wouldn't see it? He's totally, I just lost my thought.
He is totally.
Wow. Okay. Moving on.
No, yeah. So no, I think kind of where you were going with it is the fact that, it wasn't necessarily just that moment. Like I think he was saying he's seen it from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
He's known from the beginning, and that's probably a lesson more from Palpatine than Obi-Wan. He was playing a long game with her. A Jedi would never do that, obviously.
Yeah, he
But
was just using her.
he's using her, yeah, definitely
The
as a
Inquisitor basically
tool.
says as
Yeah.
much. The Grand
Yeah.
Inquisitor.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah, that's true.
he's like, did your rage and your revenge is useful for a time. And so
Mhm.
yeah, they used her because she wanted that, and so that helped them to draw out Kenobi. I'm assuming is that was her main mission that they wanted to
Mhm.
use her for, and now she's no longer useful.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I thought
then
another
okay, go ahead.
interesting point to that was that they, quote unquote leave her alive. And this kind of goes back to, what I've talked about before, in Star Wars. Once again, there's been moments where they say this person is too dangerous to be left alive. And I've seen people kind of say like, why wouldn't they have like killed her or finished her off? Even the Grand Inquisitor could have been like, you try to kill me, I'm definitely going to make sure that you're dead, right? But I feel like, you know, even the Grand Inquisitor, to some extent, even though he, and for all we know, that could have been part of the plan. Like we don't know, but either way, if we don't know how much he was involved in that whole plotting, or if being stabbed was part of it, but either way, I think that them leaving her basically to die, or whatever, is the fact that neither one of them, like Vader proved she clearly was not a threat. She's
Mm-hmm.
not even close to a threat to Vader. So he doesn't care. She can, train for 20 years and try to fight him again. He doesn't care, and then I think even the Grand Inquisitor at that moment, you know, having like, the honor of, telling her that this was all a scheme, and it was all fake. You were never the Grand Inquisitor, and like, toting it about and playing in her face, right? Was also like him getting like that confident, proving that confidence that I don't think that he thinks she's a threat either.
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't think either one of them was like, oh, we need to kill her because later she could come and attack us, or I think at that point they're like, she's nothing. We got you from the gutter, we're putting you back in it.
And even if uh I think the reason why they didn't kill her mostly is maybe because they think maybe if she does survive, maybe she'll still be, her revenge will still be useful for a time.
Yeah,
But that but
that's
this
true.
also but this also, if she's still going to remain with the dark side, it might also, put her in her place
Yeah, that's
where
true.
where
Well-
she's not going to try anything stupid like that again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one question that this show brings up is how many people can actually survive getting stabbed with a lightsaber?
Not
This is her
Qui-Gon.
second time.
Yeah,
This is her
sadly
second
not
time
Qui-Gon.
being stabbed in this show. Yeah, and that's how we lost the great Qui-Gon Jinn. So
Yeah.
man, why couldn't he have
It's
survived
the
that?
dark side. Only dark side users can survive being stabbed or
survive
cut in
being-
half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stabbed or cut in half. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that's
But-
man. This yeah. I love that we finally got to see behind the curtains, with Riva, and we get to finally know her story, her motivations, and just like she said at Celebration, there is a lot of people that are like, "Oh, I totally saw that. I totally knew that," and I think I thought of a lot of different things, but I wasn't necessarily like guaranteed that, oh, she's having revenge, for her classmates. I wasn't necessarily thinking that. I was more thinking like, oh, who is her real enemy? Who's she really trying to fight for? And I
Mhm.
definitely wasn't thinking that she was going to be fighting for her classmates. That was really cool for me. And then the other
Mhm.
thing is, I definitely wasn't thinking that she was going to blame Obi-Wan for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, both of those were really cool for me.
And so then so then after she's stabbed, she finds the communicator, which Bale was so elegant with. And then
Yeah. Half
So-
a quarter
so-
of the message was enough for her to know what to do.
Yeah. It perfectly garbled so that she knows the person, the name, the location, and that
Yeah.
there's children involved.
yeah. And then they escape on the ship, which the hyperdrive is down and they're being pursued.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't
Then-
necessarily know if they were being pursued, or if the hyperdrive being down is a story mechanic to give Riva a chance to beat them to Tatooine.
Interesting.
Because a hyperdrive that's down, it takes a long time to get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And then Luke, or not Luke, Obi-Wan senses something's wrong and basically is sensing that Riva has the information. And so then the show ends with a sleeping Luke.
Yeah, and I love that. I don't know why, but Luke is one of our favorite characters of all time, obviously, and he's so epic, he's so legendary, and so even like seeing, glimpses of him at the beginning was so huge. And I think because I've been so into the story, I haven't really, pondered much about Luke, because the story's so epic right now. But I think just like going in, top down view, which was so awesome for one, but then just seeing sleeping Luke, he isn't even doing anything. And I was like, yes, it was like goosebumps. I don't know. Even as a child, Luke is just legendary.
I hope we get, just as good of Luke as we've gotten Leia.
Oh man.
If we get to see some actual Luke action.
Yeah. Except he would be
If
like,
anything-
oh man, do I have to go change the evaporators again?
The cracking voice.
That's
If
great.
anything, this show is going to give me a new appreciation for Leia's character when I watch the original trilogy.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I obviously haven't watched those since we've started the show. Man, I'm super
Mhm.
excited to watch those again.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Well, we do have things we all have to get going here, and so we're gonna have to wrap it up. Be sure to check out our Discord server. You can join us there. We have discussions all the time there, and you could ask us questions that we could answer on the show. And also, all of our Twitters are on screen, and links are in the description. And yeah, I think that's everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thanks everybody for watching. And as always, if you ever want to join the show, join us here in the council chambers. We love to have guests, and we love to hear your perspective on Star Wars.
Yep. And as always, may the Force be with you.